State lawmakers clocked back into work. Arizona's senior senator sues the Pentagon, and Donald Trump threatens to send troops to the Twin Cities. This is your political roundup. Governor Hobbs kicked off the 2026 legislative session with her State of the State address. That was about two things: lowering the cost of living and making her case for re-election. Just before the governor took center stage, it was democracy, slightly off-key. Protesters outside busted out their brass horns and whistles to drown out a pro-ICE rally attended by key GOP officials. Meanwhile, talk of taking over Greenland and possible military action in Iran dominated the conversation in our nation's capital. And finally, President Trump threatened to use the Insurrection Act to send troops into Minneapolis to try to silence the anti-ICE protests in the city. And that was your political roundup for the week.
And here to talk about all of that is Republican consultant Marcus Dell'Artino and Democrat Matt Grodsky. Thanks for being here. Let's start with the State of the State address. Marcus, you've been a connoisseur of these states. State of the State speeches now for years, as long as I have been watching these. Top takeaways from this one.
Well, first of all, watching the political roundup, thank God nothing happened this week, huh?
Boring.
So here's the thing that you got to put it in context of: Democrat governor in a state that's got a Republican voter majority, and it's campaign year. I think she did a very smart speech. She hit some politically popular issues that are so popular, in fact, Republicans agree with her. And particularly, and I know it's not sexy, but data centers, and she took a swipe at data centers. And I will tell you, the residents of Arizona are very frustrated. You're watching in Tucson and throughout Maricopa County. And so I thought that was a smart move. And then she went after Airbnbs. And I think that was a smart move. No offense to my friends in the Airbnb business, but, residents are frustrated about these issues. And so you see her sort of trying to hit on some of these populist moments, which is smart when you're trying to reach independent voters.
Yeah, and let's get your perspective on this. You're the Democrat here at the table. You're in the political game. You're the political consultant, stuff like that. You're looking at this speech. How do you think she did politically?
Oh, I think Marcus brings up a great point. She's reading the mood of the electorate, and I think she performed incredibly well in this speech. I think affordability was the main takeaway. I mean, I think there was a headline this week about how unemployment in the state has gone up, as high as it was during COVID. Obviously, the premiums have spiked significantly. So I think she's tapping into that, and I would expect to see more of that messaging as we get closer to November, which I know we're all pumped about.
Did she go far enough on this? I mean, because as Marcus was saying, I think everybody agrees housing is a big, huge, humongous issue in Arizona. You've got the President of the United States saying that he's working on plans, is going to do something to try to stop corporations from buying houses.
Yeah.
How come we're not hearing that same kind of rhetoric from this governor?
I think we'll get there. I think she went as far as she needed to in this speech. She's laying the groundwork. She's setting the agenda. We got a long way to go between now and hopefully June when the session is over.
And, I would say Democrats have introduced that bill in the past. It just went nowhere. We're seeing Republicans just introduce that bill this year. I expect something actually to move on that.
You're starting to see some convergence on this issue, right?
Yeah, exactly. You're saying, as I like to say, the political spectrum isn't a straight line. It's a circle, and we're watching them meet up. The other thing I think that's interesting, and most Arizonans need to know this, is the federal government owes us over $700 million. And that was money that was spent on border security, right? But if the federal government was not to reimburse us, that equates to double taxation for Arizona citizens. And so she doubled down on that, and I think Republicans want that money. If you're a Republican congressman from Arizona, please make a statement. Go get us our $700 million, because we're being double taxed.
Speaking of taxes, that's the big fight this week. Republicans, after she kicked off the legislative session, fast-tracked their tax conformity bill. I know usually when you say tax conformity, I have to wake somebody up. It's a very boring issue. It's never really any kind of big issue down at the legislature. It's almost automatically done, but this year is different. Governor's calling for about, $220 million in tax cuts for their conformity package that's based off the big, beautiful bill. Republicans want a little more than double that. But the governor has already vetoed the Republican proposal. How does this end up?
Well, they're going to hurt our revenue. I think that's the main message. But all she has to do is keep talking about the fact that she wants a tax cut for the middle class. I think the Republicans are struggling, frankly, to message against this. And quite honestly, the broader electorate is not paying attention to what the Republicans said or did this week. They're not following the conformity issue. So I think the ball's in her court, and she's going to have the advantage when it comes to messaging this, because she's the governor. She's got the bully pulpit. She says, I want a tax cut. Republicans are struggling.
Are Republicans struggling with this?
No, respectfully, I disagree.
Or they're going to turn the table on this and try to accuse the governor of vetoing tax breaks in a year of where affordability is the issue.
Let's talk about what's in the bill, because
why would we do that,
Because
Marcus?
at some point here, people, it's not what you think, it's what's printed on black and white. And so here's what the Republicans did, is they got rid of those factors that would have benefited the higher wage earners, right? And so that's non-sexy things like SALT provision and accelerated depreciation, of which I won't geek out and talk to you about, but those would generally benefit higher income earners. They doubled down, took that money, and plowed it into some of these middle and lower income tax cuts. And so what you have actually is a difference of how much money we are going to spend, not on the higher incomes. This doesn't benefit the rich. And people that say that are focused on the H.R. 1, not the actual tax conformity bill. The question is whether you're going to double down and give that much more money to the middle and lower
But how
class.
are they going to explain that? How are they going to message that the way you just did, right? I get the nuance, but in terms of selling it to the broader population, I think that's where the struggle is.
Mm-hmm. And I think the big question, though, is going to be whether or not the legislature can get this done before Arizonans really start filing their taxes, because that's something I know that both the Republican leadership wants and the governor wants. But unfortunately, we're going to have to take a quick break right here. And right now, is the U.S. really going to invade an ally and send troops into Greenland? That's next on Politics Unplugged. And to get more in-depth on the issues, check out the Politics Unplugged podcast this week. I'm joined by Arizona House Speaker Steve Montenegro. The Politics Unplugged podcast drops every Sunday evening wherever you get your podcast. And let's bring the panel back in. Let's continue this discussion. We were talking about Greenland, and you got an interesting social media ad or something in your feed this morning.
Folks, Denmark is literally on your social media now, and the messaging is something to the effect of, we just don't understand. We were best friends, and we don't understand what's going on because we still want to be best friends with you. It's hilarious if it weren't for the fact of where we are and having this discussion.
Yeah. Is this something popular with the Republicans you talk to?
No, and I think in a larger perspective, this is the problem sort of within the MAGA. MAGA is a movement. Parties have platforms, and the platform defines what your party stands for. MAGA is much more of a fluid, sort of moving situation. But what you're seeing within MAGA, and we certainly see it with Marjorie Taylor Greene, is where those separations happen, right? And Marjorie Taylor Greene, in addition to being involved with breaking the Epstein files, has been upset about foreign involvement in foreign nations. And everybody, I think, in the MAGA movement would have defined it as a party that's much more isolationist.
Yeah, and Matt, what's your take from this? You're looking at this as the Democrat. Do you think this is just posturing from the president, or do you think he really wants to get Greenland one way or the other?
I think he really wants it. I think the trick for us is not to get sucked into a trap on the operation, whether it does or does not happen. I think we got to bring it back to the local level. What is this doing to put money in your pocket? You, the voter, what is this doing to bring down costs? You guys are hurting. What does this do to help you, right? And the Republicans can't answer that, so we got to go out there and put out that juxtaposition. So I think that's our goal for the next few months.
Okay, and let's talk about what's happening in Minneapolis. President, again, threatening to invoke the Insurrection Act. That's a very old law. It was made by, men who wore powdered wigs and buckles on their shoes. It hasn't been invoked very often.
Lately it has, but...
But your thoughts on this? I mean, sending the possibility the Insurrection Act would allow the president to federalize the National Guards or send military troops into the streets of an American city.
I don't think it's a winning look, to be quite blunt with you, Dennis. And here's my cautionary tale, is that midterms aren't very far away. And we should start putting together a plan to actually capitalize on the midterms, because American citizens start to get pretty jumpy when they see American troops arresting United States citizens or shooting United States citizens. And so I certainly understand the issue. But there's a better way to go about it, I think, for Republicans.
Okay. I wanted to ask you about the ICE operations in general. We're seeing that ICE itself is becoming more and more unpopular with the public overall. You're even seeing support decline amongst Republicans. I want to ask you specifically, we saw Maricopa County Sheriff Jerry Sheridan, Republican sheriff, say that if ICE does come here, if ICE breaches the peace here, that he is willing to arrest ICE agents in the streets here. And I think your answer is very interesting because it wasn't long ago you were running a campaign against Jerry Sheridan in 2024.
Yeah, and when I was with the party in 2020, we were running against him too. So yeah, we're in the upside down. When he starts making sense, you got to question some things. But look, he's got the federal government that's doing all the crazy for him. You know, saying this and then doing it are two very different things. So we'll see how he follows through. But look, if all the pressure we put on him in that time made him moderate a little bit, mission accomplished maybe. So we'll see what happens. But I think the bigger thing is ICE is losing the thread in this conversation, right? Swing voters are turning against him. Immigration's the president's most popular issue, but he's losing the will of the people on this fight. So I think we just got to keep pushing that as we get closer to November.
And the fact that, you know, Joe Arpaio's former right-hand man, former chief deputy Republican, is making a statement like this, it's, you know, remains to be seen whether Sheridan would actually do what he is saying, but the fact he is saying it is significant. Is this a moment in Republican politics here in Arizona?
No, I think we're overestimating it. I mean, Jerry Sheridan's a lifetime lawman. And I think when you talk to lifetime law enforcement personnel, they will tell you, I am here to uphold the law, regardless of who it applies to. And that's essentially what he said was, look, if you break the law, I have to arrest you. I don't have a choice. And whether you're with ICE or you're a general citizen. And so I think that is exactly at the heart of his statement.
Fingers crossed.
And also kind of want to talk about another big story this week. It's, you know, it seems like Kyrsten Sinema is the politician that we can't let go of, and then she keeps making headlines. She was sued recently in a North Carolina court under an old homewrecker law because she was accused of having an affair that destroyed this woman's marriage. You know, what's the thought there? Because we did find some evidence that this guy was put on her payroll of Senate staff, which gives it its taxpayer angle on this. What's your thoughts on this mess?
It'd be a weird plot to guarding test too, I guess. You know what I mean? But I don't really think, other than it being splashy, that it's super relevant to voters or anybody at this point in time. She's no longer our statewide senator. So I just don't think that it's something that has a lot of staying power. Interesting, but not something I think people are focused on.
Yeah, and your thoughts on that?
I mean, most people were shocked to know that there was a homewrecker law. Number one. Number two is it kind of reminds me of the story of Icarus. When you fly too close to the sun, you know, the wax burns. And she was certainly hot commodity. I mean, she was front and center on that data center out in Chandler. She's raising a significant amount of money for that business roundtable. Unfortunately, I don't know whether the story is true, and I don't know if it's been verified. I will tell you, every Politico I know in town was texting that story yesterday.
Well, and it's also, we'll wrap on this, it's also, you got to reiterate that we're just getting one side of this, a spurned ex-wife on this, and a long way from getting all the facts of
we'll
that
have to talk
case.
about it more.
Yeah. Nothing like a woman scoring, huh, Matt?
All right, and that is all the time we have this week. Be sure to join us next week for more Politics Unplugged. Good night.